Hello folks, and welcome back to this build of the rudder bug with wing wiggle. This was an idea that was obviously being thought through and developed by the previous builder, Dick Lindsley, although sadly he never completed it, and I think I'm on the track of what he was trying to do. So you can see there now that each wing will have separate control via a couple of hefty servos, and if they're mixed together, that'll give both pitch and roll. So now that that's sorted, I can move on to complete some of the other tasks. And I'll just put the tripod down. The next area I want to pay attention to is the nose area. And Dick had obviously tried bending up the undercarriage. He obviously had a couple of attempts, but I think he was on the wrong track. It's not altogether clear from the plans how they suggest you do it, but basically I think it needed to be that way, with an equal bend this way to match this one, and the wheel would be put in the middle, the legs sprung out and then clamped back in place. That would give the desired undercarriage as shown on the plan, but you wouldn't have any control over direction while the model was on the ground. I don't think that was a big issue back in the day, because a lot of the time this sort of model would have been hand launched, and as long as it hit the deck and rolled in, there wouldn't be any real attempt to steer it. But I want a bit more control than that. I can just envisage if there's a gust of wind or there's a bump or a rut on the strip, if the model veers off, there's a lot of plane going in the wrong direction and it isn't a lot of fun. That often leads to problems. So I want to have a steerable nose leg, and I've salvaged this one from a scrap model that was given to me, and I don't think it'll ever fly, but it can contribute to making this model fly. It's quite a clever design. It's nice and short, which is what's called for in this design. The wheel is meant to just clear the underside of this part of the fuselage, and in general, the actual undercarriage is far lower than you would normally expect to see on a radio control model. So this will work fine. It's sprung loaded, which is a nice feature, and obviously via the horn you've got some control. So what I'm going to do is drill this out and bolt this undercarriage on a little bit lower than that perhaps. I don't know, I think that might just work actually. Yeah, it'll have to be a little bit lower. And what I'm going to do is run two cables to the rudder servo, and the rudder servo will have crossed cables going to the rudder itself, and that will allow the wheel and the rudder to work in harmony to give some control over direction. So let's crack on and get that put in place, and then I'll talk about some thoughts I have regarding power to this model. And there we have it. I've got the front leg on, not without a few curse words, I must admit. Nicely bolted on, sprung action, which I'm happy with. It needs some tubing routed inside so that it can be operated on a pull-pull system or a continual loop system. Now, the main undercarriage legs, the wheels rather, are too small, and you notice that rocking. I mean, it's because there's a tail skid on it, and somebody did point out that the tail skid would be more trouble than it was worth. Well, that might be the case, but it's part of the original design, and I think it's a nice quirky feature, so it's going to stay on. I'll just get bigger wheels for it, and I think vintage models look great with big chunky wheels anyway. So that's that part of the issue solved, which I'm happy with. The next part is regards the power system that I'm going to use on this model, and it's really here that I'm asking for help from subscribers or anybody who's just popped in randomly on this video. I think because it's an experimental model in terms of the wing wiggling, that it would also be nice to experiment using both electric and IC on the model. And also that would give me the opportunity to compare the experience of different power for the model, and see how it feels. What does it actually feel like when you fly the same model under electric and under IC power? This is what got me thinking about it, I have four cell batteries of 3,600, I think the others are 3,400. They're virtually brand new. I've never really used them because I purchased them for a couple of foamy warbirds, which I think I've flown in total maybe 8 times. And that's because they're not really my scene. So I thought this would be a good use for them. I know that if I don't use them, they're just going to waste. You notice a cavernous opening here. The model has doors on both sides, which that's upside down, wait a minute, there you go. Which will be hinged like this, and that will allow easy access to the interior. So it'll be very easy to slot one of these batteries into a purpose-designed interior box to hold them in the right position. If I make a standoff box for the front end that matches a commercial motor mount for an engine of about 30 capacity, so they match up, it would be easy to interchange between the two. I'll make a plywood standoff for an electric motor that matches the same holes as a commercial motor mount. And that would allow me to crack on, get this thing flying under electric power, and then at a later date when I've either sorted out the C2 engine I've mentioned and put new bearings in, or I've picked up another suitable engine, and then compare the two. And I think that would be really interesting to try and do. There is a stumbling block, and the stumbling block is basically my ignorance. For example, I've got an electric motor here that I had in a plane, which I sadly lost to Christian Eagle. I loved it, but standing on it didn't do it a lot of good. It's a long story you don't want to hear. So here we go. This particular motor has some numbers on the side which don't mean a lot to me. 2820/10. I'm assuming the 2820 is something to do with the dimensions of the thing. It helpfully says on there, it's very fine, I don't know if you could pick it up, that it draws 42 amps at peak, doing 1,200 RPM. I have no idea what that equates to in terms of an IC engine. I understand IC engines, I've got a good feel for how big the engine needs to be to do a particular job. This is a vintage plane. You can generally go smaller capacity than you would in a sports model or a semi-scale model. I think a 32-stroke and even a modern 34-stroke would probably do the job on this. It doesn't need a great deal of power. However, I have no idea whether that motor, for example, would be up to it, or do I need a different motor? I have some other options open. I don't know how to work it out. And part of that is I've never been madly into, as long as the electric planes worked, I didn't go into the working out and calculating them. And then when I got into the hobby and really started building and flying, I am drawn towards building balsa models and putting nitro engines in them. I'm not against electric. I think it has a great potential, but it's a different sort of flying. And that's part of what I want to experiment with. So I'm really asking for people's help. If you could give some feedback on how to work out whether a motor's the right size, an equivalent of a 30 or maybe a 40, what size motor would you need to go for, running on a 4S battery. So if you can help, please do so. If you've enjoyed this little journey up to now, please give it a thumbs up. I'm adding this video to a playlist on this project, the rudder bug. So if you want to see any previous videos that you haven't looked at and you want to know my thoughts on how the mechanism was designed to work for the wing wiggling, then please look it up. So take care, folks. Hope to see you soon.